Kei te mātaki katoa mātou I te kraka nei. Interesting, there's a clock facing us over here, by the way. Just sort of let you know if you haven't been up here. And all of these fellas are watching the time.
Desperately.
Desperately. Bueno, kia ora tātai. I tēnei rā, I tēnei kaupapa, tēnei iahiahi. Utira I te taumata kōrero no hakene. Me te aha, e mihana ki te kaupapa nāne tātou katoa I whai te mai ki te papa tongarewa. E mihana ki a koutou o te papa. Utira o tātou waka. Tērā, I pai mai ki uta. Haera, kei wāhi ke. E tēnā koutou katoa. Me pēnei pēr te kōrero. He nui ngā kraki e takitaki hea I tainei hira. He nui anō ngā kraki e takitaki hea I te tata nei, tēnei rā. Kei te noho tonu, te mano au a kraki ki ringi a tātou I tēnei wā. Koena wai hoaki kunaka. Tēnā koutou. I was going to say, it's great to see you all, but the lights have dimmed. But yeah, tēnā koutou. Some of you may have just come in this afternoon and may not necessarily know who these people are. Some of you obviously do, but I'm simply going to ask them to introduce themselves very quickly. You see the clock here, Phyllis. Just so I'm not presuming that you all know them. So we'll start at that end. Wari, ka huri pēnei mai.
Kia ora, tainei Te Waka, tainei Te Iwi, tainei Te Hapu, whaingaro Te Moana, Aotearoa whenua, kawhita tangata, ko Manihera Forbes tukunga o Wati, kia ora.
Kia ora pai. Kia ora mai tātou, ko Heemi Eruera tōku ingoa, no Ngāpuhi nui tonu, he hono kaha ōku ki Ngāiwi katoa o te taitokerau. Kia ora mai.
Ai, kia ora tātou. Ko te aki wepi a te Jack Thatcher tōku ingoa. But you can all call me Jacko, if you get the chance. No tauranga mōna hau. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora tātou. Mihana kia tātou, kia koutou I te rānei. Ko kawhia Te Moana. Ko make tū te marae, ko Ngāti Mahuta, te hapu, ko Hoturoa taku ingoa.
Kia ora tātou katoa, ko Stanley Conrad tōku inga, ko Pārengarenga Te Moana, ko te Kau, te Kaina, ko te Aupau te Iwi, ko Waimirirangi te whare tūpuna, nā reira, kia ora tātou.
Ka pai. Kia ora koutou. Just so you know, my name is Wayne. I used to work here at one time. I lost my way at the back there this morning. When kia ora koutou. So kaupapa o ngā kōrero I te hei nei. Just to let you know, the title of this particular session is The Art of Navigation. And I'm going to throw some questions at these fellas here, at different ones, and allow them to respond to those. So they're really, really simple questions. Jack wrote them. And no, they're searching questions. But, you know, we talk about navigation, I'm saying generally. We talk about navigation, and then we talk about traditional navigation, and then we might be assuming that we know what that means. So I'm going to ask someone here, Heemi, Māui whakamahara mai. I'll just sort of pick on Heemi. Traditional navigation, yeah. How did I
Yeah, so I actually only just came to listen to Jack and Hotu for an hour, and I was going to ask them some questions, Chief.
That's the art of navigation, eh? Just
we call that a deflection. Moku nei nā, you know, it's difficult to really categorise the immensity of mātauranga that's contained within that particular word, navigation. And I think when we talk about tradition, for me, I always sort of go back to our original kōrero around te timatanga o te ao. Ngā pū kōrero e pāna ki a rangira o ko papa, me a rāua tamariki katoa. Māui, tāwhaki, tāne nui ārangi, nā wira kōrero katoa. So I kind of try to begin talking about the tradition of navigation from that perspective. Yeah. Hoina no.
And you look this way at Hotu, because Hotu was going to respond to that as well. Ni. How ki a koe tēnei me te navigation, Hotu?
I think often, people look at navigation and navigators, especially during this time that we've been going through the recovery and regeneration of this kaupapa, about getting a waka from here to there. But I think a lot of the roles that are a part of that are all the things about looking after the people and the community and everything else that attaches itself to a waka, because it's quite big. And your waka is a kind of it's a little world on its own once you're out in the middle of the ocean. And so you have to kind of manage that little world as a part of your navigational thinking, but also that has to expand. If you go back to where you start off from, you need to have that good understanding of how all that stuff works and those other responsibilities within your wider community. And so I think those are things that often people miss, in that, we often find people who come to the waka and say, I want to be a navigator. And actually, they only see the getting from point A to point B part of that mai. They don't actually understand that there's a whole lot more. There's a whole lot of other layers of responsibility that lead you to that point. And so I think it's a big, it's difficult sometimes for people to fully realise what those layers of responsibility are. It's like what Jacko said earlier this morning, when with a 1% strike rate, because once people start coming to be involved in it, then they realise all this other stuff that is a part of it starts to become quite difficult, and calls for a lot of determination and calls for a lot of sacrifice. So, so sometimes that's quite hard for people.
Yeah. Pehe o whakaro wari?
I think those two answers are pretty good. But yeah, maybe just picking up on that with what Heemi was saying in terms of navigation, kia nei, it's encompassing your whole environment, all the layers, the physical, the spiritual, and being, doing your, and then as a navigator, trying to tune in to all of that around you. So then when you're showing things, you see it and can interpret it to understand it. And then what Hotu was saying in terms of the roles and responsibilities, it's a funny thing, because if you like one of those people that, I want to be the navigator, say if you do get so far and you learn enough about navigation to realise, it's a big responsibility. And once you've learned that much, you can't actually stop. You have to keep going to continue that tradition and tikanga of sharing that knowledge on, that Mo set for us. And your navigation world, it can be like a big community, or at times it can just shrink right down to your immediate whānau, depending on the circumstances that you need to focus in on.
Yeah. Just thinking back to the group who spoke before and made comments about if you're building a waka, then you're building a waka, especially one that's going blue water sailing, and you need to preserve lives, and that's a huge responsibility. Navigation, just touching on what you see, the same sort of thinking, you're actually responsible. And I'll come to Jago. Yeah, we hear terms like navigation, traditional navigation, then the emerging terms or old terms like wayfinding, which I don't know anything about, but you'll be able to explain.
Well, wayfinding, I suppose that's a modern term for our traditional navigation. When we look at that, I had a person talk to me about Piailug and how he was from Micronesia. And he says, so you don't actually have any of your own knowledge. And I told him what Mo said to us. What he said was, who is it that draws the lines between you and me? You know, what's a Micronesian? What's a Polynesian? He says, we're all one people, all of this ocean. And what your ancestors knew, mine knew. There's no difference. You know, and I remember saying to somebody that his was the example, that tauira, that allowed us to follow those old pathways and to find our way across the ocean. He never actually shared with us his actual knowledge. What he did was gave us an example of what to do. And we've been following more recently, I suppose, a pathway of reconstructing what belongs to us. And what that means is that we look at our motiata, our tauparapara, and I mentioned it this morning, just in that waiata that I learned when I was at high school. Oh, for those of you that weren't here, that waiata describes a certain part of the sky, certain time. It goes, takina maira ko ngā hui a matariki, puanga tautoru ka ngaro atu tahi, mā e taku rua, ka rewa keirunga te tini wheturiki, puhia, it goes on, puhia ki te hau, ki runga moe hau, taku kuratangi, whakaingoingo nei. And I learned that when I was at high school, and that actually is something that inspired me to want to learn more about the heavens. And the reason I bring that up is because it's those snippets of mātauranga in our waiata, and as I said, in our motiata, and all those hidden gems are there for us to, to pull out and use again. And so if that's the way that we retrace our ancestral pathways, then that should be a cool way of being able to link yourself back to your tupuna. But for me, I'll just get back to Nainoa. Nainoa was our teacher. He taught us in a Western way, mathematics, science, and I learned that way, and I was good at learning it that way, because I'm more mathematically minded. But good thing for me was that I'd learned land navigation when I did cadets when I was at school, and I learned how to navigate on land, draw, I suppose, pathways on a map, and transferring that knowledge to charts and using, the compass in different ways to find yourself around on the ocean wasn't a big leap. The concepts were all the same. So learning in that way was quite easy. But transferring that over to a, I suppose, more intrinsic form of being able to bring yourself into that environment was a lot more difficult. Took me a while to leave the mathematics behind, and I haven't absolutely done that. I like to record what I do and do all these things. And so that's what Nainoa taught us. And I always remember Nainoa, when he did his first voyage, solo down to Tahiti, one of his friends, Will Koselka, wrote a book called An Ocean in Mind. If you want to learn what it's like to be, to navigate and have someone like Mo Piailug testing you, you should read that book, An Ocean in Mind by Will Koselka. And in the book, there's a pinnacle moment in there where Nainoa gets asked, where is Tahiti? And Nainoa asks him, Mau Piailug asks him this. And Nainoa has to show him where Tahiti is. And then he gets asked, how do you know that? And so Nainoa explains that. And then I was on Tapu-Tapu-Aotea, on Raiatea. We'd just been on Tapu-Tapu-Aotea, and I was sitting on this jetty out in the middle of the lagoon with Nainoa and all these other guys that were trainee navigators, and he was asking our questions. One of the questions was, where is Ngahiku? Ngahiku is the Big Dipper. And of course, up in Hawaii, it's way up over here somewhere. And we're all looking down at that horizon, and I'm going, there it is, just above the horizon. They'd forgotten that they'd come all the way down to, to the southern hemisphere, and that Ngahiku would drop down towards the horizon as they come away from the northern hemisphere. And so they're looking at the Big Dipper on the horizon, but they're all looking up here. And he goes, okay, so he says to me, okay, Jacko, tell me, where's Tahiti? And I had a buzz moment, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, he's asking me the question. That was... I'm telling you this because only 3 months prior to that, he told me I wasn't ready. And he told me he didn't think that I would be ready to guide our waka to Hawaii. Internally, I was using swear words in response. Outside, I got depressed. So I took all that stuff that he gave us, and what I found was that he and Mo had already given us enough, and Mo had given us some little instruction that showed me that things are easier than we think. We clutter our minds up with all these things, when the reality of our navigational stuff, if you take away all of that stuff that you use to help you prepare and clear your mind, you come down to maybe 3 things: finding a direction, maintaining a direction, and finding your target. So, where's Tahiti? And then the other bits are what you do to find it. So, when you clear your mind of all of the clutter, of all that mathematics, of all the science, and all of the those things that are making you stress, it becomes easier. Well, that's what I found anyway, that's a long way of explaining around to
I think you answered
navigation.
I've forgotten what the question was.
Yeah. I was trying to get my head around it.
Yeah, Stanley was confused.
Well, I was just going to say, I got told 1 hour, so I'm using up that half an hour that you gave us extra.
Kia ora, Jack. Stan mentioned this morning, I just said Stan's name so he knows he's responding soon, but he mentioned this morning that he was Kaiahoti on Taurere in 1992. Who was a navigator? Mau. Okay. So are there any moments on there where, like Jack talked about this morning, there were pinnacle moments he mentioned where the penny dropped around finding something, finding way somewhere?
Well, first and foremost, I think the following from a kotu goes, a navigators, everybody's involved in preparing for a voyage, and especially with preparing the waka and all that sort of thing. But to make the navigator's job easy, you've got to make sure your waka and your crew are ready to sail the waka. And you've got to work, because your navigator does their job as navigating. Your job as a crew and the kaihotus to make sure that waka's sailing, the crew safe, and that navigator does his job. But yeah, those moments on the waka in '92 when we sailed up, I mean, like I said, like Jack said, when those times of storms, which are the most, for navigators, the most stressing time. You're fighting sleep and fatigue, and you've got to maintain that position or where you are on the ocean. And like Miles said, you look into the storm and you don't turn away from the storm. And looking at him and see him on board, like I said, gives that calmness about having a navigator there and having him there, especially him, gave us that, at the time, like I said, we were mataku, but then having them there in the middle of a storm just gave that calming effect. And, then that's where you give that trust. You trust your navigator and the mahi that the navigator has to do. It's a lot of different things to make up, especially when on the ocean, on the Voyager with your waka, and making sure your navigator has that ability and has that position or that part to play on the ocean to navigate the waka.
There's some Ōrako Moana here, and of course these ones up on stage here talk about tohu and identifying tohu and then interpreting and following. And I'm just preparing you guys for the next sort of question around particular tohu that you have seen, interpreted, and it got you somewhere. They may be simple, they may be more complicated. But a few months back, I threw a riddle at Jack, not expecting you to answer this, Jack, and I always had to write it down because I forget it, because I wanted to know what this meant in terms of his knowledge and their knowledge about the stars. Tauwhare putu mai te mātahi. Whakau matariki ki te ākau homai au tahi kiuta. Now, we might recognise some of the constellations in there, but the context might escape us, and therefore the interpretation. But in terms of tohu, I want you guys to relay perhaps an experience where you found a tohu that reinforced your faith in what you were doing out on the ocean. Hotu.
Well, no, I was going to say you should talk to Wari, because we had a couple of good ones when we started to
Wari.
It'd be good for him to tell everyone what, because we were looking for these as we were travelling.
Apai. Kia koe te hawhi haora, what?
Nā, kia ora. There was a trip, Te Moana, 2011. We sailed Haunui from Marquesas Islands and up near, what was that, about 10 degrees south of the equator. And that was the chance that Hotu and Jack asked me to navigate, so that was an awesome opportunity, and we saw so many things along that way. Some of the key ones was going through the equator itself. And so I think Hotu actually touched on this. We had heard the stories from these guys and other legends in the past that when you get to the equator, you'll be greeted with the black dolphin. And we'd only heard of those stories, and when we were sailing, we didn't talk about it. You just keep, I guess you just keep it in the back of your mind. And then we, it was sort of in the evening, and then we got to this place where all of a sudden, just like that, just it's almost like as far as the eye can see around the waka was these hundreds of black dolphins. And it was one of those, really shiver down your spine, because the kōrero that he had been passed down came true. And we were really blessed to see that. And then that night is when we saw, almost like to confirm where we were, was we saw a meteor start on the side of the sky and just fly through the air, this big meteor, and then it got directly to the middle, up high in the sky, and it exploded, just shattered into like trillions of pieces through the sky, and they all glowed as they all came down. It was like off a movie, those American movies that they make, but it really was that example, and it just blew us away how we were getting these obvious signs to really reinforce where we were. We carried on a bit because we were going through the doldrums, and the doldrums, really low cloud. We had low cloud for 3 to 4 days, and we're still trying to head north. And me and Hotu were just sitting on the side of the waka talking away. Just, we think as you do as a navigator, if you have enough confidence in where you're going, you carry on. If you don't, then you stop and wait until you see a tohu. So we were carrying on, and then in these clouds, just out of nowhere, just this little hole appeared in the cloud, and the moon shone through. And it only lasted 10 seconds, but we were both sitting there, we both looked at it. And the moon was in its first quarter phase of tamatea. And when you look at that phase, you know, you got half the moon, and it's got that direct line through it. And it just so happened to also be at a zenith. So that line is a meridian line showing you north and south. And we were heading north. And then when we looked at it, the moon was that way, and the line was going across like that. and we both looked at each other and was like, oh, I think we're actually wanting to go north. At that time, I think we're actually heading west. But that's the beauty of that tohu, is that it revealed itself to us, revealed where it gave us our direction, and then it allowed us to correct ourselves again. And then knowing that we had gone off course, just thinking back, okay, how long do you think we had been off course for? And then just factoring that into talking about wayfinding, our new position. We carried on further up, and to find Hawaii, there's 3 tohu in the sky that you use. Well, you know, there's many, but the 3 key ones that I'd been taught was to use mahutonga. I think mahutonga is one. Oh no, that's not. So Southern Cross is, you know, in the Aotearoa sky, it's circling all the time. But as you get to Hawaii, it drops lower and lower. And the time that we were travelling in was June, which is the perfect time for when mahutonga is standing upright, but up at the latitude of Hawaii of around 20 degrees north. Mahutonga is the height between the top and the bottom star, is the distance between off the horizon. And so that tells you when you're at the right latitude to make straight and turn into Hawaii. You got that one. And then you've got Hukulea, the star Hukulea, the star of gladness. And it's the star of gladness because when that star, for us at the moment, it's really low on our horizon. The further north you go, when you want to make straight into Hawaii, that star's right above you. And so when you see that star right above you, that's the time to make straight and turn into Hawaii. And then there's the third one, which is Hokupa'a, the North Star. So again, we can't see the North Star here because we're so far south, but for every degree north of the equator you go, that star rises 1 degree up off the horizon. And so it's if you can get it right, so if you want to turn in at 20 degrees north, you just got to measure that star 20 degrees off the horizon. And so that's what I'd been taught for years, but in reality, when you're out on the Waka, and the Waka's moving around like this, and then you've got cloud crossing all your cover, it's actually really difficult to pinpoint to a degree, let alone 2 degrees, you know. And 1 degree off is 60 miles off. And it's really easy to make a mistake in that space. But talking about tohu, you know when you're walking down the street or when you see someone and you make eye contact with that person, even just briefly, just make eye contact, and in both your hearts you know that you just made eye contact. You know, it's true in your heart, you know, and you can't deny it. It was like that with those.
Any of you done that?
Where are your
married couples here?
Trying to get to something deep here. So in that moment with Hukulea and Hokupa'a, it was that same moment for me where I saw that star, but the star saw me. And yeah, so made that contact, and it was those stars were actually telling me that they are in the right place, that it's true. And I remember talking to Hotu because those 3 things all lined up perfectly, but as a navigator, it's such a, you know, we take our people's lives seriously, and we take the responsibility of guiding our waka seriously. And talking about, man, we could be 1 degree off, could be 2 degrees off. If we're more than 2 degrees off, we won't see the island of the maunga of Mauna Kea. We might actually miss Hawaii. So yeah, even though everything lined up really perfectly, talked to Hotu what I was seeing, he just just encouraged me. If that's what you're seeing, then that's what you're seeing. And yeah, we made the call. And what was amazing to me is we made the call. We turned. It was at night time, obviously. In the morning, at the taurapa of our waka, we had a triple rainbow from one side of the taurapa on the waka to the other side of the waka, just a triple rainbow. And it was just an amazing, again, a tohu that in terms of the wairua with that tohu was that, our tupuna were with us the whole way. They were never going to let us make a mistake. And it was like a realization of all of that what we had just done, and that affirmation is that, yeah, they are with us. And then when we got to land, we actually checked on the GPS what degree we turned at. And we actually were aiming for 20 degrees, and where we turned was 20.0005 degrees. I think that equated to 500 meters off. 500 meters off on a voyage of 1,200 miles, 12,000 miles?
Not 12,000.
Let's go 1,200. But to
1,800, I think.
Oh, 1,800. But it just blew me away, because it felt like, as an individual, as an individual, it's impossible to get that accuracy. But with the power of the tupuna and your guidance, that they can make that happen. So yeah, kia ora.
I was only joking about that half hour. So I'm going to come back to Hotu, because you were on there, Hotu. So how whakaro with the mahi a watu?
Actually, it was a great trip, because, see, one of the things, because Wari, I guess, Wari, as training with Jack, had picked up a lot of the writing everything down and doing maths and stuff like that, because often he'd come to say, we'd have yarns, or probably every day we'd have yarns about where we might be and stuff like that. And then, like, I'd say something to him and he's going, oh, how did you figure, because you're not writing the stuff down. I said, oh, well, one of the things that I sort of have tried to practice is trying to put things in little small packages, and then as soon as I don't need to worry about it, I leave it over here and worry about what's coming up next. And that, but the really great thing was when we were having these little yarns, especially when it was like their call about the equator and other things like that, we'd be having things like, oh, do you remember the kōrero about da-da-da-da-da? Or do you remember the kōrero about this kind of stuff? And, oh yeah, that's right. These tohu, like the dolphins and all that stuff. And I said, well, those are things for us to look at. And part of it too was the understanding that you actually sometimes won't see all these tohu, but if you're doing it, if you're cruising along and they pop up, all they do is confirm what you already knew, kind of a thing. It's quite interesting, because I remember one time I was at a conference and Mo was here, and we were kind of there supporting him. And we had people, well, someone said to him, oh, there's this fish or bird or something that, if you're at a certain place, you'll see this or you'll hear it. And Mo goes, that's right. And they said, oh, so do you know exactly where you'll see that? And he goes, no, I can't tell you exactly where that is, but when I see it, then I know where I am. Mm-hmm. And then they're going, oh, so you need to see those things if you're lost. And he goes, no, it's just about that when I do see those things, they confirm what I already knew. And so for us to be able to do that, and I think one of the greatest outcomes of this trip that we did with Wadi navigating us to Hawaii was when we got off, because I asked him, I said, what did you learn from this? And his immediate response to me was that our tupuna will never let us down. And that was his immediate response. And for me, I said, that's good, that's a really good learning experience. Because that's what I actually wanted to hear from him, was that, that there's all these things that are around us that our tupuna show us. And like sometimes I say to people, oh, you know, because sometimes I go and sit on the end of the waka by myself and they go, well, what are you up to? I go, I'm just going to have a conversation. You know, I'm just going to have a conversation with all my tupuna and that. But that's a conversation in my head. It's a conversation which really is a reflection of all the conversations that I've had about this particular mai. And then once I sort of go through that file, all these files that I'm in my memory of the different talks that I've had with different people who are experts at this, those are the conversations that give me the answers to what I need to do. And so that's the kind of stuff with Wari. We were having our real conversations. And one of the hard things for us, because we were kind of sailing on this schedule, and so I had to be a little bit of a buffer between the captain who was trying to get us, because we were sailing in this big fleet, and so they're trying to keep everyone together and trying to do all that stuff. And we were miles away from everybody else. And he keeps coming to me and going, oh, I think we're going to have to switch to proper navigation because, you know, we're quite far away from all the other canoes. I said, don't worry about them. And he said, oh, but, you know, we need to arrive on this day, rah, rah, rah. And I said, no, actually, at the moment, all we need to do is get to Hawaii. Doesn't matter what day we get there, but we just need to get there. And that's what this journey is. And also it was quite there's a point there at about, I don't know, halfway through there where I was having to manage this. And it was quite challenging. It was quite challenging to do that. But we managed to do it. And I think the other thing that was good for us was that in the time between when we sailed from a little island called Whakarawa to the Marquesas, I sort of spent that time working on a lot of our crew so that they knew exactly what stars they had to be looking at and practicing steering and holding a straight line and all that stuff. So that by the time Wadi jumped on, he could actually say to them, I need you to do this, I need you to hold this course. And they were all pretty good at it. And they're all getting pretty good at estimating how fast we were going and all those kinds of things. And so what started to happen is that a lot of pressure was taken off Wadi so that he could just focus on our direction and looking for all the things that he needed to look for, because he was able to be confident that the crew was going to be able to do the stuff that he needed them to do without to check on them all the time and having to make sure that they do. So it was a great experience. It was a really great experience. And we're really proud of what he did, you know, to be able to take this waka and sail, you know, and sail somewhere you've never sailed before. I think that's the important stuff about what we're talking about, is that in a lot of these instances we're sailing our wakas to places that sometimes none of us have been there before. This is our first time, but we're utilising this information that we've been lucky enough to get, and then going places that we've heard about, and then getting there. It's awesome, you know. It's really great. And then when you sit back and reflect on it, you think, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing, and it's pretty cool to see someone do that. And for crew to be a part of that is a pretty neat thing too, because they'll all remember that kind of stuff. And then our problem at home here now is being able to go on trips to keep allowing that kind of learning and that kind of experience to be maintained. Because that was a test, really. Like that trip that Wadi navigated was a test. And there's heaps of pressure on you. In the old days, there was heaps of pressure. Well, there's more pressure because there's only two outcomes: pass or fail. Right? And pass is you get there, fail, no one hears of you ever again. And so it's a little bit different now, because, you know, if you're sort of not that good on there, there's sort of other fallback ways that you have to be able to try and correct all of this kind of stuff. But, you know, that's a little bit different to when our tupuna used to do it. You know, that's a big test. This was a big test too. And yeah, we really, really fortunate that we had that opportunity to bring a navigator through and test him on a very big run like that. It was great. It was really great.
A couple of points that Hotu made there around need to maintain this. Any funders out there need to maintain this for the next 10 generations, any funders out there. And if you fail, there's no reset. And just to touch on last month at Kawhia, launched a waka that Heemi's crew, Heemi knows he's got a question there, that Heemi and others carved over there, Manua Kuaka. And I've heard these ones talk about the kuaka as one of those tohu several times, a number of times. But I'm just going to ask, not to talk about the kuaka, me pai, kōrerotia, Heemi. Nā tohu o te manu. He's thinking now.
I'm just trying not to be too familiar with the kuaka, like the star. Nā tohu o te manu. You know, I think it was on the Norfolk Island League, Jack, on our, was it our way up or the way back? On the way up, when we actually saw that tohu, the kuaka, flying with us. And you were my partner in crime on that one, so you'd recall it as well. But what that tohu showed us at the time was that our course lines were aligning perfectly to our destination. So there's a really cool kōrero around the kuaka being, as a group, being called te manu kapua, you know. So they're not just seen as a flock of manu, but, you know, they're visualised by our tupuna as this entire kapua, te manu kapua. And yeah, there was one really, really important tohu that the kuaka showed us in that particular journey. And of course, there's some other tohu that, you know, you hope aren't telling you what they're telling you. And I recall on our way back from Rarotonga in 2013, where I was kind of looking up at the sky, and I noticed, what's the technical term? Three inversion layers of cloud moving from 3 different directions. Did I call them right? Right? Inversion layers. There was a southeast cloud inversion, one from the northwest, and one that was a little bit more west. And as I saw them coming together, I kind of got this sense of dread, I suppose you could say. And it wasn't until after that we could confirm it. But what I had thought at the time was that there was a tūpuhi on its way. And later on, after the 8-day storm we sat through, that was confirmed. And it was interesting getting home and going over the data side of it and the science of it, and realising that those directions we had seen in the cloud inversions were exactly the directions that these 3 cells, much like Stanley's kōrero about Moe's storms when they were out, these 3 different storm cells had converged and come together and just decided to drop a 600-mile wide storm on top of us. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's a tohu, bro.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Jack, you got any particular instances of tohu that have either confirmed, reaffirmed, or...
Yeah. I'm going to go back to Heemi's story about the kuaka, because I don't think he gave it enough, you know, that description of kapua manu. It's actually, I think, is more in regard to how the whole skies are full of these clouds. Because when these birds came past us, they just filled the whole ocean, and you could hear them, you know, coming. And they were there all day, the whole day, just one day. And millions of birds moving. Well, I think there were millions of birds because there were a hell of a lot of them. And And what I saw was they went in 2 different directions. I think I remember saying to Watty or somebody, I'm going, bloody hell, they're lucky, eh? Oh no, I was saying to some of the crew, they're lucky, eh? And they're going, what's that? Why is that? I says, can you see that one? Those birds are going where we're going. And when we got to Norfolk Island, they said, oh, you've just missed the kuaka. They were here and left yesterday. And I said, no, we didn't miss them. Aye, and that was, but that's as a tohu, you can't get anything better than that. I have kuaka fly directly over my house every year. They've just, at the start of summer, 1st of November this year, I think it was Tamarēreti, and these birds flew over our house again, and they do that every year. And on the 1st of November this year, it's not always exactly the same day, but it's around that tamatea time that they arrive. And that's something that my wife and I have been following the kuaka. We watched them on this thing, shows on the computer, because there's these birds that they've put. Anyway, we're keenly interested in those.
Watch them on the computer, you might miss them.
But one instance of a tohu, I suppose, is leaving Rarotonga in 1995. We're coming home, and looking for the sun because it was total cloud cover. And Hector and I were on the deck, and I'm saying, boss, we need to go this way. West is down this way. And he says, boy, I couldn't tell you which way was west. Let's just wait and see if we can see the sun. Anyway, about an hour and a half later, sky opened up, gave us our sun, and then closed up again. And I says, I told you, boss, we've got to go down that way. So there's all sorts of things that create a tohu that you need, because we never saw the sun again for like 4 days. Was it 4 days, Hutu? It was about that, eh?
It was a long time.
It was a long time, and I was navigating and trying to figure out where the sun was in the morning, and I looked down this way. I said, I'm looking at the clouds, and I'm going, oh yeah, they're all the same colour. So it gets dark over here, and I look back again, and it gets dark over here. Oh, there he is. And stuff like that. You have to utilise whatever you can to find the sign you need to be able to, maintain that direction that you need to be travelling in. Another one is, cloud covers a lot of your tohu. When we were on our Wakatapu voyage, we were sailing cloud cover again, totally over the whole horizon. We're sailing along. We're basically just using the wind, and I'm not comfortable with using the wind all the time because of, wind shifts and stuff like that. So we're sailing along, and anyway, one of the crew comes up and he says, "What's that star?" And I said, "Oh, there's a star." And I look up, and he goes, "What's that star?" And I said to him, "One star? And you expect me to know which one that is?" And he goes, "Oh, so you don't know?" And I went, "Yeah, it's Atutahi." And he goes, "Yeah." Not believing me, goes, walks off. The clouds parted, a little bit later, and he goes, "Yeah, it is Atutahi." And I went, "What? You didn't believe me?" And he goes, "Well, how did you know?" And I said, "Well, it's our job to know." Because that was like 3 weeks into a 6-week voyage from Aotearoa to Busby, and we were 3 weeks in, and every night, it changes a little bit. Around about that same time, Atutahi would be up around there somewhere, and I was saying, well, if we're sailing in the right direction, then it should be up where it was last night, and that's where it was. So that's how I know. And I says that's because part of what we deal in is observation. We have to observe everything that we possibly can to find whatever tool we need to keep ourselves going to the right place. And it's a constant search. Never ends. So there's all of those. Another one too is you want to talk about Rapa and Nui, Steve? Rapa and Nui.
He'll talk about Rapa and Nui.
The fish and the bird.
The ones where...
I think, yeah. But those, I'll go back to 185 when we left on Hokulea on its pretty much maiden voyage to from Rarotonga to Pewharangi, and I think Naino it was a stress time because Mao had left Te Waka. He said to Naino, you must sail this on your own. So when we set sail, we did all right. We did that voyage in 16 days from Rarotonga to Pewharangi, to Waitangi in 85. But over halfway of the trip, Naino was navigating, and over time it wasn't resting, and there was parts there where the weather wasn't playing in his favour and stuff like that. And then there was one time there that he started just doubting about where he was position-wise. He had, like Jack would say, you know, you read all your books, you do all your figures, you grind all your numbers out, and you set this thing in your head. But that's what he was going on back in those days, was numbers and angles and times and where he should be. And in this part of this voyage, it wasn't where he wanted to be. And then it got a bit sort of clouded up and showery, and the weather wasn't in a good flickle, and we had the escort boat, and it was terrible weather. Anyway, there was one part there was a calm day, and then it happened when I was only about 22, and I was looking at the back, and I saw these things were bobbing up and down, or bobbing in front of us, and then I said, "Oh, what are those?" And they goes, "Oh, those are whales," and I go, "What sort of whales?" And he goes, "Oh, sperm whales." And I went, "Oh, yeah," and I looked at it, and then next minute, I decided to head towards the Waka. Well, you know, young fella, you get straight away, you think, oh, well, here we go, we're going to get charged and get smashed up and stuff. So I ran to one end of the Waka, all the Hawaiians stayed at the front of the Waka, I was at the back, looking at this, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, you fellas are going to get smashed first, and I'll be the one still floating on the Waka. Anyway, there was this whole pot of whales. They left us, and then there was this one bull. It was big, bigger than Hokulea. Came side on the starboard side, and it was in a charging state. It just came straight at the Waka, and then just before it hit the Waka, it dived, and the tail came up, and it just rubbed the Waka, just pushed it slightly. And then we just said, oh yeah, that's just, and rolled over, and you could see its eye, and then the next tohu, at that time I wasn't thinking of tohus, I was thinking about, that was the end of that. And then we hit this bit of a shitty weather, and then there was like lightning everywhere, and it was like both sides. You know, when you talk about storms, there were storms on both sides of us. But there was this window where we sailed through. And then we got through this bit of a squally patch of weather, and then we had dropped our sails, we dropped hoku sails, and you know Hokulea back in the days had a curved boom. You're trying to drop a curved boom on the spar, on the deck, rocking and rolling. It's not a good thing, it's pretty dangerous. So we stopped our Waka, got through the storm, and then that was the second one, not realizing again. And then the next one was we had the lure out, and then we hooked this marlin, blue marlin. It was big blue marlin, and we were all yahooing, we were going to hook this marlin, and this was fresh fish. Just before it reached the Waka, it spat the hook out and straightened the hook out straight. And then by then Naino was just had enough. He just was ready to actually, I'll be honest, to pull the maps out and start plotting. And then I think one of our crew, his name's Billy Richards, said to Naino, hey, you know, have you ever listened to Hector when he did the karakia before he left in 83? Oh, you know, when we started, you know. And then remember him, he gave you a taiaha. And Naino goes, yeah, well, why do you need to have a rest. So we said to Naino, rest, you need to rest, and maybe, and just Hawaiian, which is maybe grab the taiaha and sleep with your taiaha, and what Hector said. Anyway, it was early morning, the sun was rising, and I was just coming off the 2 to 6 watch. And it was myself, Leon Sterling, Bruce Blankenfield, and another guy. We was on watch, and I was steering, and I was looking. The sun was rising behind. I was looking across the horizon, and then I saw these. I thought they were clouds, of course. Saw these lumps, and I thought, it's clouds. And I kept watching, and I remember Harry, one of the other Hawaiian guys, when you look at an object, look at the bottom of the object. Look right on the horizon line and see if the sun rises, and the sun was rising, and if the sun rays goes through in that object, there's no light. You know, so I kept watching this one thing, and in my mind I said, that's an island, that's a motu. And I just a bit too sort of mataku to tell anyone. I kept it to myself. I kept steering away, and as the light came up, and I said, oh, yeah. And anyway, I remember Billy was right next to me, and I said, hey, just don't want to let you fellas know, but I think there's a motu over there, an island over there. And Billy goes, are you sure? And I went, yeah, it's an island. I think it is. And he goes, well, should we wake Nino up? I just, oh, no, just in case I'm wrong, don't wake him up, keep him sleeping. And then after that, another couple goes, oh, yeah, you might be right. And we woke Nino up. And then, sure enough, we hit Kermadec. We were southeast of the Kermadec Islands. When Nino saw that and saw where we were, he straight away knew exactly where he was, how far to go, position we were in, the house we were sailing in. And so, and then when I got back to Waitangi, I talked about these tohus to the kaumati, and I said, oh, I saw these things, and then I remember Uncle Simon Snowden saying to me, he tohu tera. And I went, well, any whales there? And the assistant goes, no, it was a tohu. And there, actually, when we looked at the GPS and where we had those encounters with those tohus, that shoving of that whale hitting the waka was actually pushing the waka on course. So that was a moment. Regarding heading to Rapa Nui, I think the most, we had 43 days on the ocean sailing to Tupuai, and then we had another 25 days to Mangareva, and I think Jack and Piripi, our newe, our main concern was that last run to Rapa Nui. Well, it turned out to be the best run, actually. Yeah. What really got me was the tohu I really look at, and it's in some of the photos I took, was when we left Mangareva, the sun was setting on Mangareva. When 3 days later, the sun rose by Pitcairn Island. And then we got to Rapa Nui, the sun was rising near Easter Island. So in my head, I thought, wow, we stayed on this track. And young Piripi Smith put us on this track, and that, to me, that's, when Rapa Nui is like a pin in the middle of the ocean. You just have to get the cloud cover over it, and you'll miss it. And for us to spot watching the moon rise, I remember moon rising and then following the sun. That was a moment. I thought, wow, that's where you think our tupunas, the tohus, they're just there. That's what it's all about, how they can use these.
And like Jack said, Rapa Nui.
Yeah, and then Rapa Nui, we were 2 days out, 3 days out.
3 days.
You had Rapa for about a week.
Yeah, this bird landed on our deck, and you could look at when the bird landed on our waka, on Aotearoa, we knew it wasn't an ocean bird, because the feathers, usually you see a gloss, it's a bird that will live on the ocean, but this bird landed clean on our deck, we knew it. And then that was like this bird, but before then we had this small, we were doing tutuing with our GoPros, and Kia Roa was tutuing with a GoPro, and we looked down through the hatch with our alpha boat. You shone and could see this little bluefin tuna, this little yellowfin swimming along the hull of the waka. We were going so slow, and we put the camera in. There was this little yellowfin tuna swimming along, and it was swimming for us for maybe a few weeks, a week or so, and we called it Rapa. So we called, calling up, and one of the reasons why this thing was swimming was like mahi use their predatory fish, and they use any floating object to hide, and they attack out, and pretty much it's all flying fish. So little Rapa was shooting out and hammering some flying fish, but at the same time it was looking after itself, because he was only a little fish, and there were bigger fish out there, so he was very clever and cunning that he could sail along with the waka. And Nui was this bird that landed on our waka, and we called it Nui. We knew where this bird was a land bird, and at that time must have gone too far out, and didn't use the sun. What happened? Didn't get the sun in time to get back and navigate back to the island, and then it landed on the deck. So we called the bird Nui. So the fish was Rapa and Nui. And the time we were close to Rapa Nui, that bird flew. So that was a good tohu on its own. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
We're not bad, eh? We've got half an hour and 19 seconds. I'm hoping that some of you have got questions for Taumata Kōrero, but I'm going to ask, Hotu, in terms of what the future of this knowledge and practice and this mātauranga goes, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think the future of our mahi is, if you compare today to what it was like in 1980, it's a big leap. But there's still a lot of things that have to change in the way people perceive what this mahi is. You know, I think we entitled this kōrero today, The Art of Navigation. And I think that, you know, it is a bit of an art form, but it also is the kind of thing that we have to get into the minds of our people and everybody else. Actually, everybody's into everybody's minds about what this actually is all about, because you know, we still battle with people who think that this is kind of hocus pocus sort of stuff. We still have to battle with people who but don't think that there's any real value in the knowledge that we do. You know, yeah, just a really recent example is when we had our big hui in Kawhia a few weeks ago, and we'd had a few of us got interviewed for the news and breakfast and all of that. And then on the breakfast Facebook thing, is people sending in comments like, oh, you know, because we wanted to have school kids coming down, we had quite a big engagement with schools, and then we have people writing comments like, oh, they shouldn't be going there, they should be going to school to learn about maths and science and stuff like that, you know. So those are the kinds of barriers that we have to work and bring down. And to do that, you know, we have to have more things like this. And somebody asked me yesterday, oh, what did I think about what did the future look like? And I said, really the future for this kaupapa should be looking like occupying a whole floor of a place like Te Papa.
Say that again?
It should be occupying 2 floors of Te Papa. But and where there's more actual hands-on engagement for everybody, so that they can see what this kind of mahi entails. And so, you know, to be able to do things like that, we're getting to a space where people are understanding a little bit more about it, but we still need to get that kōrero out to a wider part of our population. You know, one of the things that's it's kind of funny now when you think about it is that, you know, I remember when these guys left Aotearoa on Te Aurere to go on their first trip, people were crying on the beach because of the because we've been brainwashed over the years to think that these kinds of trips were on the verge of death trips. You know, that if you're going to do this, that you're actually risking your life unreasonably to do that. But if we found, you know, that if you plan it properly, you do all the right things, these trips are actually not bad. So we've kind of got from a place of, geez, are you really going to do that? To, oh, these guys are off on another trip now. Yes, it's been, and that's within our own families. That we've sort of slowly had to see this change happen. And so these are the kinds of changes, I think, from a general view that the population has, is they've got to start looking at it like this is actually something that's worthwhile. It's something that's worthwhile doing, it's something worthwhile knowing about, and it's something worthwhile for young people to start looking at. And maybe these are the ways that when you start trying to develop learning pathways, that when you can contextualize things like maths and engineering and physics and all those kind of things around a traditional kaupapa, then it makes sense to people. It makes sense to young Polynesian or young Pacifica people who know that they have this kind of a history, but ask you questions like, what do we have to learn maths for? Or why are you wanting us to do science? But when you say, well, actually it's an integral part of what your tupuna used to do, so it's quite handy, and you say, and well, how do we do it? Well, you can do it on the waka. You can use your maths to figure out how fast we're going. You can use maths to work out what direction we need to go to get someplace. You can use you can use physics and everything else to design waka. That's because our waka in the old days were designed in ways that made them perform well. And so trying to bring all of those kinds of Western systems, or Western, I guess, ideas around different subject matter into something that's relevant to all of our people is some of the stuff that I think needs to be worked on, so that this stuff becomes more a part of everything and more understanding occurs. I think it's got a good future, but we still have to work on it. We still have to work on it. And it's young guys young people that have to drive that future. Because at the moment, we have a lot of resource now. We have 5 or 6 big waka in Aotearoa, sailing waka. We've got lots and lots of waka taua, waka tete, kōpapa, small sailing canoes. So we've got the resource. Whereas back in 1980 through the 1980s, we had to go to places like Hawaii to get that resource and that experience and that learning. But now we've got those things here. We've sort of made that part easier for those people who want to participate in it. But then it's up to them to use that resource that we leave for them to continue on to keep building our kaupapa up.
Yeah, kia ora hotu. Jacko, you want a last word on this? Following on, what's the future? You're particularly known for navigation.
Well, so I think we're in a reasonably good place. Even though I said earlier on this morning that graduating 3 navigators out of like 300 is 1% strike rate isn't that great, but it's probably accurate for the amount of commitment it takes to be involved. We've got a lot of young people now that are keen and wanting to learn and experience and do all those things. So we just got to find more opportunities for them, to test themselves, to be to step out of their comfort zones and learn how to I suppose be in the world and be a part of it like the ancestors were. Because I think what we've done with the modern world is that we've separated ourselves from the environment. We don't know what it is anymore. And so that's why when people say that the environment's under pressure through global warming, all that sort of stuff, people don't care because their lives haven't changed that much. Oh, the weather's bad. They don't realise that we're on the cusp of something worse. What we need to be doing is giving our young people a chance to grow in their own strength, be proud of who they are, and for them to take the next step, not so much in, it doesn't have to be in navigating, but, navigating their way through I suppose, the effects of what's happening to our world, and then coming to a better solution than our generation has given it. Those are the sorts of things I think that this type of kaupapa can do, because it gives strength to our young people, makes them make good decisions. You have to make a good decision to voyage. If you're a person that makes dumb decisions, like deciding to go out on the 17th of August. Sorry, that was us leaving Auckland on the 17th of August in 2012 on a voyage called Wakatapu, and just as a storm arrives. So, I'm saying that jokingly, but the reality is that if we can create young people, create opportunities for young people to realise the strength they have that comes from their tupuna, and for them to actually go out and experience those things and be strong young leaders for the future, then when we tell, you know, when they look at the world, they look at it through a different lens because they're the ones inheriting the mess that we're leaving for them. And so, you know, we're creating strength in that leadership, and hopefully, you know, they'll make better decisions than we did. You know, that doesn't have to be all about voyaging, but, you know, I just think voyaging is a really good vehicle for developing strong, young people that are confident in themselves.
Kia ora, Jack. Kia ora koutou. So we've got a roving mic somewhere over here, and can we have the lights up so we can see who might be asking questions? There's a hand up. Oh no, that's the person. Have anyone questions? Ask questions of all of them, or pick on one of them if you want to. Any questions out there?
Tēnā tātou katoa, ki te mihi kia koutou, mo tō kōrero I tēnei ahiahi. My question, and I think, bro, you touched a little bit on it, about the doldrums, the equator. I was wondering if you could share a bit more about the intertropical convergence zone and any experiences or kind of what happens in that place.
Is it for Wadi, or that's for Wadi?
Oh, anyone.
Any of you? Okay.
Oh, I know these guys have got some experience. But, no, a really interesting place because you hear so much about it, you know, the doldrums. And Jacko had prepped us really, really well for that experience. It's quite interesting because, you know, that big word that you said, the ICT into blah, 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 how it actually moves, eh? It moves up and down. It can be above the equator, below the equator, so you're never actually sure when you're in it. The experience we had was really interesting because I'd heard so much about how it's such a tough time, and as a navigator, it torments you because a lot of the things that you rely on are no longer there for you, and so the clouds, heavy cloud, the swells, you know, you're used to using some long sea swells, but the state in there can change all the swells, so the swell patterns get really mixed up and are difficult to use, and then also your winds drop away quite a bit, or they can change quite quickly. And so, you know, all these things cause for a difficult time. So we were sailing along, and we hit these weather patterns. And I thought, oh right, we're in the doldrums, and we hit it at about the right location. It was just after the equator, and then we got 2 days later. All this nice weather came back, and I was like, that wasn't that hard, and I was a bit disappointed because I was like, you know, I sort of wanted to be tested in those conditions, and then the next day we hit the real doldrums, and that was a period of about 5 days, and it was brutal. It was brutal, but you know, it was really difficult because, you know, because as a navigator, if you ever, you know, I said it before, if you ever feel like you're not sure about where you are, then sometimes it's best just to hove to. And you know, at times we did just slow down, but that was because we had to. There was no wind, but you got to keep making momentum to try and get through it. So you know, that time I mentioned with the moon, just getting that little thing to help get us back on track. But I guess as a navigator, just the mentality, just trying to keep, you know, it's so important that you are never lost within yourself, or never think that you're lost. You've always got to know where you are. You've always got to know where you are, because as soon as you're lost, you know, that light that you are for the crew and for the waka, that light goes out. So it's really important that you maintain to be that light and within yourself. And so just an awesome, challenging period. And you know, that's why I think that leg is it's one of the key graduation legs from Marquesas to Hawaii, because it goes through the doldrums. And you know, all the legends of navigation navigators have gone through that as well, you know, now modern times. And they've all shared those experiences. So there's so much to already learn from those mistakes, and try to not make those same mistakes again, but know how to get yourself through it from their experiences. So, yeah, you might. Anything, Jack?
Also, ITCZ, Intertropical Convergence Zone, is the doldrums is it's a funny old place. Sometimes it's only like 360 miles wide, so you know you think, oh, it won't take long to sail through that. If you go due north, you've got the shortest distance to go. So we were all told, if you get to the doldrums, try and find the shortest pathway through it. And we were also told, going to be your greatest challenge. And then almost soon after that, my first time going to sail through that, I got told, oh, it would be good if we actually towed through there. And I went, no way. Hey, we're not going to do that. So we didn't. And we went through there really fast. And I thought, the doldrums is nothing. I didn't have that same experience the first time. And then we get up to Hawaii, and then we sailed down. And I was about 12 days in the doldrums. And I was at this point where I was a little bit full of myself, wanting to be a super Māori fella, and wasn't utilising, you know, my crew. I was trying to do everything myself, and I fell over, you know. And before I knew it, I was 160 miles off course. And when Hector actually said to me, he says, "Boy, you're buggering it up." and had to be corrected. So you know that was a big dent to the ego, a huge dent to the ego. So I had to think, and one of my really good friends from Hawaii who came to sail with me, Kiahi Omai, he came in and he says, "Bro, you need to let us help you." And I'm going, yeah, well, I can't do this on my own. I see that now. And so what I did was I gave them jobs to do. You know, I was still navigating, and after that I got back on track and found Rarotonga. But you know, the whole thing about that is that the doldrums can put you into the state of mind that really tests you. It's not a physical thing. It's a mental test. And if you don't pass the test, then you know you don't know where you're going. And I failed that test. And I'm quite happy to say that, you know, because somebody said, "Oh, why do you tell everybody you failed that test? Isn't it about, you know?" I said, "Well, we're not trying to be, you know, we're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to be out there and sort of feel that we're, you know, that we're doing something important, which is, you know, I suppose regaining that knowledge that we set aside, you know, a long time ago, and we just got to relearn it. And we're going to make mistakes, so we shouldn't be ashamed of mistakes. And so, you know, that put me in a good frame of mind. Actually, made me a little more humble too, I think. Because, you know, the first time up we found Hawaii, yeah, I'm the man. And then doldrums came along, oh, no, I'm not. You know, so, you know, so those doldrums. But when we went on the Mano Te Moana thing, it was 23 days from Tubuai to Mangareva. That's only 800 miles. That's not very far. What we were doing, though, was going where the historians said we couldn't go, which was to windward. So the trade winds, southeast trades, and they can be anywhere from southeast trades, east to southeast. And what we did was we did a little loop up into Mangareva. We had good winds that helped us get there, but we got 30 miles off Mangareva, and it took us 4 days to get in. And I was thinking, oh, good Lord, what's going to happen if those winds are like that all the way to Rapa Nui? we're going to have to zig all the way down to the Southern Ocean and zig back up and zig back down, and we might make 1,500 metres, 4,000 miles all over again. And, you know, so we did a lot of karakia and stuff. But what happened was, and I was watching it, I was watching these weather things, what's called Zygrib, and they're giving me gribs. So when I was on Mangareva, I was watching these weather things, weather charts, looking at them, and I could see that there was a change in the doldrums. They were drifting south, and there was lines, all these lows forming just above where we were. Well, they were a few hundred miles away, but they were creating certain weather things that were suitable for us. So these lows circulating like this, and then they were giving us northeasterly winds. So we would get up and go down with the northeasterly wind, and there was this huge high below that we didn't want to get in because of strong winds down there, but the edge of that was these were giving us southeasterly winds. And so we went down, hit the southeasterly, and went back up again. Then we went down, and then we got northerlies, and we went right along like this and bumped into Rapa Nui. Piripi Smith, that was one of the most amazing navigations, you know, that he performed in, and because he started doing dead reckoning at the start, which is the mathematics stuff, and then he saw this his tohu that he was using. I thought it was one that he and I decided on, but it was something else that he decided on himself, which was cool. It meant he was using his own initiative, and he used that tohu for that last week, about 7-8 days, to get, because that's what we had, these northerlies, so it made it easier, and then brought us directly to Rapa Nui. That's going to eastward. You know, that's one of the things, because all of the prevailing winds are normally counter to that. Yeah. But we had a light, I think it was an El Nino season that did something with the weather up there, and I've done some studies on that space and haven't seen the same conditions. Yeah. I haven't looked every year. It's when I think about it, I have a look, you know, and haven't seen those same conditions. So you might say that was lucky. I think it was fortuitous for us, but I think that's what our ancestors determined for themselves by being able to cross to the Americas, pick up the kumara and the yams and all those things, and bring them back, leave some chicken bones, you know, and for all those ones that said it couldn't be done, I shall laugh and I shall cry. I shall laugh again tomorrow for all the critics that said it couldn't be done because you did it. That's what Heemi Eruera said to Hokulea when they sailed down, and when Stan was on board, and that was in my mind when Piripi found or fished up Rapa Nui. That's a pretty cool space to be in.
Kia ora, Jack.
Hey, because we know that our tupuna must have been able to do that.
The other thing, of course, is seeing tohu in tangata. So about 2 or 3 days out from Rapa Nui, Jack noticeably relaxed, and Jack's not a relaxed person. And we knew something was up, but we couldn't. He saw it. We didn't see it till a day or so out. Yeah.
There was one moment then when we were on board, and then like Jack, and we knew the motu was there, but we needed Piripi and Piripi to spot it and to call her. And it was that morning. It was still dark, and then when the moon arose, and we were looking for. Piripi was looking for lines because he knew he was close. Just looking for the features of the land, or looking for the land, and looking for the shape of the land. He was looking at one end, and we all had this. We could see what we were, but we needed to call that point in time that this is it, you know, his navigation that he navigated away. And then when he actually called it, a second after that, the lighthouse went off on the island. So any later than that, the light would have gone off, and that would have been the end of him. So
South America.
yeah, South America would have carried on, but For Piripi, that was that was a moment. But I just said, man, because I was excited, but we just didn't want to show him. And Jack, but man, we needed him to spot the island first, and then second later when he called the island and the crew and him and Kia, the lighthouse went off, and I said, man, you're really close to losing that one. But ki te pai.
Okay, any other questions? We've got time for one more question. Up top there. We'll give you the mic. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, that works. You mentioned with like global warming and climate change and the next generation and sort of like getting more of that connection to like the natural world and how it works. I was wondering if you guys had noticed changes that affected navigation due to climate change and changed the winds or like that.
Yep. Who's going to answer that?
Not so much changes, I think, in the navigation. The tohu are still there, but what we're seeing is I suppose, cyclone season is really that time when you've got to be careful. Hey, we don't travel during that time. Not up into the islands anyway. That's travelling towards danger, so you don't do it. And but if you're studying meteorology and studying, that you really need to do it, because if you don't have knowledge of what the weather changes or how they're changing, then you can't protect your crew. And so what I've seen is that when I first started, the time when the cyclone season was from end of November through to the end of March. We sailed up to Norfolk Island in April. I wouldn't do that now, because both of those cyclones now form as early as the beginning of November, and I've seen cyclones form in early May. So that period of time of danger is extended. It's the window there is now wider than it was even back in 2007. We were comfortable going to Norfolk Island in 2007, because we didn't think that we were going to get a cyclone, because they should be all over, and then there weren't any. We did have a big storm coming home though, but and I had to sit on the deck all day through that, all the time through that, because all these guys were hiding away in their bunks and there were none left.
Not true.
No, that's not true.
So regarding the condition of the ocean, I mean, over the years we've been sailing, you see that on the ocean. You see that there's a lot of change in the ocean, a lot more things you see, like, the amount of rubbish you see now that's in the middle of the ocean. I think the really hard one is when you're, pardon me, is when you get near up to the equator and stuff, and that's a really rich area of fishing, and you see vessels that are just raping, hammering big time. It's like, like a motorway in Auckland. That's the amount of light you see on the ocean, and that's scary. And the thing about it is that every motu, every place has these exclusion zones. The problem is in between the exclusion zones, there's a lot of international waters, and this is where all these big vessels hang in, and they drop nets and seiners and long lines that go for hundreds of miles, and some of the stuff doesn't get recovered, so they're pretty much moving through the ocean and pretty much killing everything. I remember back in the days where we had this thing called the walls of death, monofilament nets, that these big boats used to use, and they drop 100 miles of this stuff, but they can't find them. So these nets are catching, call them walls of death, so they'll catch anything. And when they're full, they sink to the bottom of the ocean floor, and then they decay, and the nets rise up again and carry on. So this is so over the years, you've just seen that sort of things happening out there, seeing more boats, and sometimes there's places where we would used to trawl. I think the trip to Rapa Nui or on the Te Waka trip, there's a run there. I know some parts you can't catch fish in, not getting fish where you should be getting, and that's just it's just the amount of things happening out there. So yeah.
Hoi anō, e mihi ana ki kia koutou, e mihi ana ki te hanga nei, e nei pūkenga, e nei mātanga, e nei tohunga me ki. I think it's really important to acknowledge the profound expertise that we have in the house this afternoon. I know they're tired. They've been talking, and they do talk a lot. They've been talking some more than others. They've been talking for a couple of days now. They've still got a couple of days. Take the piss out of each other. But, you know, a lot of respect for te hangane. I just want to make a point before I ask Hotu to close off this particular part of the day. But I want to make a point about the mātauranga that sits here, the wānanga that sits here. Every year, we as a country invest close to $3.2 billion in research and development in the Western system. We'd be lucky if we invest $20 million in anything that's to do with mātauranga Māori. So when you consider that inequity and the non-investment in mātauranga like this for some decades and some generations, then what we have and the demands that are placed on these people and the Kaumoana and the Waka themselves, those communities, it's really hard to move forward because the weight of recovering that body of knowledge and practice sits on a system that's not yet re-equipped to do that. So I hope you get that point. Ne? But you do it, you make the sacrifices, you do the hard work, you get all these Kaumoana who are really interested and really committed and passionate about doing this, but they've got lives as well. So I'll leave that there. Really great to have our friends here and koutou I tēnei iahai, and I'll hand it over to Hotu Mane whakakapita tātou kōrero.
Mihi ana kia tātou, kia koe Wayne, whakahaere nei tā tātou kaupapa. Koutou o te papa e whakaoho nei tēnei āhuatanga mā tātou. Kia kohikohia ha tātou kōrero, ki o tātou kite, kia paua ki te rangi, paua ki te whenua, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, haumi e, hui e, tāi ki e.
Ho mai paki tahanga ni. Kapai.